Hi, welcome to episode 252 of The Corner of Knit and Tea. My name is Laura. I'm also known as Fluffy K on Ravelry, Fluffy Kira on Instagram and Twitter. I blog over at thecornerofknitandtea.com, and that's where this episode and every episode show notes will be. I have an Etsy shop called The Corner of Knit and Tea, where I sell my handspun yarns, and we have a Ravelry group called The Corner of Knit and Tea, and we are about to have a craft-along kicking off. So hi, how are you? It is Tuesday, October 29th, and as you might have suspected, I am a day late in recording. No matter what I've done this week, I feel like I am running behind. It is already late in the day on Tuesday, as you can tell from the shadow behind me. It has been an overcast, chilly day. The Midwest has gotten its winter, which was a bit of a shock to the system. Let me begin by saying, since I saw you last, I've done lots of knitting, and Wes and I went to Washington, D.C. This past weekend, Wes ran the Marine Corps Marathon in Washington, D.C. So we flew out on Friday, which was the 25th. And we flew out to DC and got in the evening. And then Saturday we played tourist. We had to pick up his packet and all his materials for the marathon. But the rest of the day we pretty much played tourist. We met up with some of his friends from the Marine Corps who he hadn't seen since he had been in, which is, let me think about this, he's been out for about 15 years now. So it's been a while, but a bunch of them have reconnected on Facebook. And so we hung out with a bunch of them, which was kind of fun for him and for me. I didn't actually know Wes very well when he was, Wes and I met online when I was in college and he was in the Marines, and we didn't actually date each other or meet in person until quite a bit later, when he was already out of the Marines and he was back in school getting a college degree. So I actually haven't met or didn't really know about a lot of these people, so it was kind of fun to get a little insight into what his life was like before me. So we hung out with his friends and we did a lot of the DC sites. Wes and I, we were staying in National Harbor, which was a bit of a ways from Washington, D.C. proper. The run itself began at Arlington Cemetery and then wound around... why am I blanking now? The mall, which is about 2.5 miles in Washington, D.C., along which quite a few of the monuments are. So what we did on Saturday was we took a cab over to the mall. We started at the Lincoln Memorial at one end and then worked our way towards the other end, which is the Capitol. Wes has never been to Washington, D.C. I went once when I was about 13 and we were studying the Constitution. And so I have memories of some things, but that was mumble more than 25 years ago. And so there were lots of things that were there that I hadn't seen, some that I didn't get to see, things that I didn't remember. So it was kind of fun because I had bits and pieces of memories. So we started at the Lincoln Memorial, which obviously is to honor Lincoln, down at one end of the mall. And then we walked over to the Korean War Memorial, which is kind of slightly off the mall, but like right next to the mall, near the Lincoln Memorial. And then we walked up by the, let me think about it, what it's called. I think it's the reflecting pool, but it's this huge pool of water that stretches between this huge like fountain that, well, it's not, I can't remember if there are fountains in it. I think there are. I can't remember. It's this huge reflecting pool that stretches between the Lincoln Memorial and part of the way down towards the Washington Monument, which is kind of at the center of the mall. So we walked along that and we saw the World War II Memorial, which is actually a fountain and kind of a circle of all the states. And then we went up to the Washington Monument, which is, if you haven't seen it, it's sort of the big obelisk. We didn't go inside, we just wandered around outside, but it is pretty big and kind of impressive. And then we wandered down past the Washington Monument, which the other end of the mall's basically bracketed at either end by the Lincoln Memorial, and at the other end is the Capitol Building. And we did not walk all the way down to the Capitol Building, but between the Washington Monument, which is in the center, and the Capitol Building at the other end, both sides of the street are lined with the Smithsonian Museums. And there are a number of museums. There are a couple of art galleries. There's also the National Gallery of Art. I'm going to miss some if I start trying to say all of them, but off the top of my head, there is the Smithsonian Air and Space Museum, which actually is where we wanted to go, but the line was out the building, out the door and around the building, and so we did not do that. There is a Smithsonian Museum of well, let's see. Native American history. There is also American history. There is a new, I want to say for African culture, but I can't remember the exact name of the museum. It's in this really cool building that I kind of wanted to go in because the building was gorgeous. And then the museum that we did go into was the Natural History Museum. So we saw dinosaurs and ocean creatures and insects. And then they had a kind of new exhibit on diseases and contagions, world outbreaks, which was a little creepy. Especially because it's true. And so we spent an afternoon in the Natural History Museum. So basically that took us several hours on Saturday, and we headed back towards the hotel. We were staying in National Harbor, which is it's east of the river, but it's also very south of the mall. So we actually had to take we either had to take a taxi or a Lyft, or we had to take a combination of the metro and the bus. So we went back and we had dinner, and Wes went to bed early because, of course, the Marine Corps Marathon was on Sunday. And so on Sunday, he got up super early. We had the worst weather possible for a marathon. Early in the morning, it was pouring. So Wes had to get himself to Arlington National Cemetery. There were some shuttles, but he spent a lot of time outside in the pouring rain. Luckily, it was not terribly cold, but what happened was it was supposed to be rain and thunderstorms all day, which is kind of bad enough. But then the rain actually cleared up at noon and the sun came out, and then it was 80 degrees and completely humid. So he ran the marathon. It took him a while and he was super sore afterwards. But he went out at about 5 o'clock to go get to where he needed to go. And because it was pouring rain, I was a terrible wife. I stayed in bed. I did not go with him to the start. I slept in, and then the marathon offered some tracking. So every so often it would update me on his progress and tell me roughly like where he was on the course and how long, what his estimated finish time was. So I got up around 10, I knit a little bit, had some breakfast, and then I resolved to figure out the busing and metro because I was pretty sure that once we were near the mall and Arlington, after the race, there are thousands and thousands of runners plus all of their families. It is the biggest race I have ever been to. Parts of it were chain link fenced off so that like you couldn't even get towards the runners near the end, and it was super hard to find each other and meet up afterwards. I was pretty sure that we were going to have a hard time getting a cab back, and the shuttles were for the runners only. So I decided to navigate on the way there and figure out the bus and taxi system, or the bus and metro, so that I could get us back, which worked out perfectly. But the deal was I had to take a bus part of the way. It really isn't very far in terms of mileage. It's just because of the way the metro is structured. So I had to take a bus ride, which took me about 15 minutes, and we went about 4 or 5 miles, and then I had to get on the metro for like 6 stops. So it really wasn't hard. It was just that it actually took a little while to wait for the appropriate bus and train, and there was the switchover. Anyway, so I got off the bus, and just as I was ready to get on the metro, I got an update from Wes, or an update from the tracker that said that he was really delayed, which is exactly around the time the sun came out. And so he got sore because his shoes and socks were all wet from the rain. He had blisters, so he was moving a lot slower in the second half of the race. And it turned out I had a couple hours to kill before he was actually going to be ready. So I did what any girl does who gets stuck in an area where she knows there is a knitting store. I should say we stayed in National Harbor, which was also called Fort Washington. And so I took the bus from Fort Washington to Alexandria, which is just south of where Arlington Cemetery is and where I could pick up the metro. So when I got to Alexandria, I was like, there is a yarn shop here. Fiberspace is in Alexandria, Virginia, and if you haven't heard of it, it's this great little shop, and I actually knew of it before I got there, and I didn't know exactly where it was, but Alexandria is not that big. So basically, I just Google mapped it, and I was less than a mile away. So I went over to Fiberspace. So Fiberspace is an absolutely lovely store. They have beautiful yarns, lots of yarns that I knew about, but you don't always get to see in person. They had the full complement of Brooklyn tweed yarns. They had Miss Babs yarns. They had Noro yarns. I'm trying to think of what else they had that I consider sort of bigger name. They also had smaller yarns like Freya, who does gradient yarns. They had the lemonade shop, which I actually bought some of. I'll show you in just a minute. And that was the first time I had seen that in person. They had Havirland, who I think is actually somewhat local to them, and she does stripy sock yarn, and they are wound in balls, so they look like sort of everlasting gobstoppers. They're just very characteristic looking. They had the periwinkle sheep. I'm trying to think what else. Those are the ones I remember off the top of my head. That is by no means an exhaustive list. But I wandered through the shop, and I usually when I play Yarn Tourist, I try and find something that is local to the shop. But it wasn't quite clear to me who exactly was local. And I have tried Havirland yarns before, so I decided to try something I hadn't tried before, and I got a skein of the Lemonade Shop. And this is a skein of their simple sock, which is 400 yards, 80/20 Super Rush Merino nylon, and the colorway is Stay for Dessert, which is this blend of pink and brown, and it was just bright and lovely and appealed to me. And like I said, I've never used the yarn before. Let me see if I can get you. There you go. So that is my souvenir yarn, and I have no idea what I'll do with it because I have no business buying yarn. But I had like an extra hour to kill, so what else was I gonna do? I could have gone wild in there, but I did not. I allowed myself one skein. So, and it is a skein that I bought without a project in mind, but I figured it is sock yarn. It would be great for socks. I know a certain niece of mine who would probably love something in this. I could use it for a sock arm sweater. I was thinking about doing that for her at some point. Or I could just knit myself a hat or wait and fit it into a larger shawl. So I'm not sure what it will be, but it is beautiful. And so for now, it's just going to be pretty yarn. So let's talk about the knits. You might have noticed that I skipped tea, and that is because I am totally cheating today. I have been working all day. It is now about 5 o'clock. I still have to go out to the market because our fridge is bare, and I did not have time to go yesterday. And so I am cheating. I have my Hershey's mug, but I filled it with Diet Coke this morning, and then I refilled it at lunchtime, and so I'm drinking Diet Coke in my Hershey's mug. Hershey's mug. So it is not tea, but yeah. So then now that I have babbled for 13 minutes, let's start on the knits. I did take lots of knits with me, and I got to some of them. So let's talk about that. The first knit that I was going to do, I showed you last week. This is in a jumbo size skein of Primrose Duchess, and the skein was 200 grams and 400 yards of a worsted weight merino. It's a superwash merino, and this is the colorway Sinatra. And so it's this bright toasty orange, and Wes actually thought it looked like a burnished copper. And I decided that I was going to make accessories for Miles for the winter in these, and I had decided on the antler hat and mittens, and I did not get to the mittens. As you know, mittens are my favorite thing in the world to knit. But I did knit the hat on the way out there. So we got to the airport early in the morning, and we did have a direct flight, but it was about 2.5 hours. And shortly, near the end of the flight, I finished an antler hat for Miles. And this is the antler hat. It is by Tin Can Knits. I have woven in my ends, but I couldn't take scissors with me on the plane, so I actually haven't trimmed them. So if you see them, that's why they're still there. Antler is by Tin Can Knits. It comes in sizes from baby through adult. And I think it's like baby, toddler, child, adult small, adult large. There might even be a medium in there. Comes in a whole bunch of sizes. It is written for worsted weight wool. I went up I went down a needle size, and that was entirely the function of what I had available. It calls for US 6s and 8s, and I had 5s and 7s in 16-inch circs, and I don't know where my 8 is right now in 16-inch circs, so I just went ahead and knit it in 5s and 7s. So it is super cute. I'm sure he'll love it, and I just need to make the mittens to match. We have another car trip this weekend. This weekend we are doing a family Thanksgiving with some of Wes's family, just a couple hours out of town. So I will take that, and I do love the way this just winds up at the top. It's just, her patterns are so simple and so well executed, and you can knit them in a variety of sizes, or you can potentially use those numbers to create some of your own, and I just love her stuff. So this is the antler hat for Miles, and I will be knitting some mittens to match, hopefully done next week. So next on the needles, I decided to do a project for me, and I sort of have no business doing this because I have a million contract and sample knits right now. But the deal is that the contract knit that I really need to finish is actually a sweater. I've showed it to you before. I'll show it to you again in a couple minutes. But it is 2 pounds of yarn when you get down to it. And I decided that I did not want to carry that with me on the plane. So I grabbed what is sort of an instant gratification knit for myself. I had talked to you about this before and shown it to you a couple times. To recap, I am knitting the Petechiae cowl, if that's how you pronounce it, and it is by Aroha Knits, who is Francois Denoy, and she, it's a beautiful kind of a mosaic pattern, and the motifs have a lot of meaning about them. She is a, I believe she is part... I don't want to misspeak because I certainly do not want to wrongly label her. I think she is part Maori, but if not, I cannot remember if she's from New Zealand or Australia. She's either part Maori or part Aboriginal, and so a lot of her patterns include elements from her culture. And elements that she wants to highlight. So it's a beautiful cowl. It is worked in 2 colors, and I gathered for my colors. This is a CJ Coho. It's Ontonagon, which is a Polworth silk mix. It was an enormous skein. I used the first half in my Sizzle Pop shawl earlier this year. And like I said, it is a Polworth silk blend, and it is in the colorway Crowley, which is a great kind of pewtery gray. The gradient, the other yarn that I'm using is a gradient. It is from Freya Fibers Hand Paints yarn, and this is in her sport weight, which is 100% wool. It is a lovely merino single. The sport weight skein is 75 grams, and it is 75 grams, 200 meters, 217 yards, and it is in the colorway Xenon, which when I bought, I thought it was purple. Now I think it's kind of a pinky purple magenta. Anyway, and I have used about half the gradient in the project so far. Basically, it started at this outer color and worked to, I am at the darkest, brightest section, kind of the brightest section now, and then heading back out. And this is the pattern. I could not put this down. So this is the Petite Akita cowl. Let me try and get my ends kind of hidden and get it to a point where I can show you. This is the Petite Akita cowl. The pattern is very intuitive. So once you get started, it's just this series of interlocking diamonds. And like I said, I am working through the gradient. Originally, I had hoped that I would get all the way through the gradient and back out, but I am getting close to the end of the pattern. I'm within about a half a repeat of finishing the pattern, and so I believe I will end up ending on the darker color, which means I will have about half a skein left over, which is not what I expected. I expected it to take more yarn than that, and so I'm not really sure. I will have to weigh it, but I'm thinking maybe I'll do a hat or something else with the leftovers. I probably won't have half left over. I'll probably have like a third. It probably takes about 2/3. Anyway, mine is coming out slightly larger than the pattern dictates. The pattern is written for DK and sport weight, and the Ontonagon is a DK weight. I'm sorry, the pattern is written for DK weight. The Ontonagon is a DK weight, and the Freya is a sport weight. And so I am knitting them together, and I think they're knitting up just fine together. The Freya is a single, so it's going to bloom a lot. And mine is coming out slightly larger than the pattern because, again, I am deviating from the needle size. On this one, I actually went up a needle size, and that's because I conveniently had a 24-inch circ. It calls for a US 6, and I'm on a US 7 because I had the right size circ in the right place at the right time, and I totally do that. It does mean that the cowl will be probably a little longer and a little wider, but I don't care. It's a polar silk and a super buttery soft merino yarn, and I honestly, I'm loving this, and I am going to wear this a ton, so I don't really care. So again, this is the Petite Akita cowl. This is by Aroha Knits, and I am knitting in CJ Coho Designs, which I bought at a local mill. I don't know if she sells online, and Freya Fibers, who does sell online in a gradient. And you know, it's interesting because in person, I'm not having a problem seeing the dark gray against the purple. From what I can see on the monitor, it looks like it may not be showing up a ton, but of course that may not be what you're actually seeing. And so I can't wait to take some really pretty pictures of this so you can see. It also looks a little bit choppy in the gradient here, and I think it's a smoother flow than that. So I'll have to take some photos and see what I can do. And I'm excited about this. Again, I only have a few rows left, and then it takes, there's more ribbing like on the top. I probably can whip it out in one evening, but I am busy making myself work on other things. I'm probably going to throw this in the car for the weekend and hope that I can knock it out after I hopefully maybe finish the sweater. So let's talk about that. The sweater that I'm working on is a sample that I have been working on all month. You've seen it several times already. And this is the Petechiae sweater by Teresa Gregorio. I'm knitting it in Zen Yarn Garden in their Serenity Worsted, which is a merino cashmere blend. It is absolutely lovely. The sweater is knitting up great. I am finally past worrying that I'm not going to have enough yarn. I have as much yarn as it calls for in the pattern, but I have been worried all along, based at the rate that I'm going through yarn, that I am not going to have enough, but I'm not as worried anymore. So, I was working on the body of the cardigan 2 weeks ago. Last week I showed you the sleeves, which I had taken with me on a trip because they were easy to knit. And this week I joined the body to the sleeves. So that is, I actually did the joining row right before we left for DC. And I did probably about 3-ish inches last night on the full body because of course the count is higher now, and I am starting to do the yoke decreases, and it is starting to look like a sweater. So there's still lots of ends, there's still lots of yarn, but here goes. This is the Petechiae sweater. The sweater has quite a bit of seed stitch detailing. Yeah, my yarns are all tangled and it's gonna make me crazy. Yes, so the Petechiae sweater is a bottom-up kind of coat-style cardigan. It makes use of seed stitch at both the cuffs and at the hem, and then it's got some really interesting textural details. I don't want to give too much away because it's the pattern, but these are the things that you can see in her little promotional video. So it starts at the bottom with more stitches, and then it does some waist gathering, which I think you can see there, and then once you get through the waist, it has some additional shaping at the top. It has a wide seed stitch border in the front that is knit concurrently with the pattern like thus, and then it will have some loops for buttons. I don't know exactly what buttons they're going to use. They finally told me, we had a discussion about it, and then they finally told me they were going to go ahead and attach the buttons when it gets there. And so this is the cardigan. I am alternating skeins throughout, which is creating a little bit of pulling, and I'm just going to need to block it well at the front because I am alternating skeins. I did not want to end up, I believe the skeins were all dyed together, but when using indie dyed skeins, it's always good to alternate so that you don't have blocks of color. I really, really did not want to worry about that. Hold on 2 seconds because I'm seeing something that I'm not sure why it's there, and yeah, I'm going to need to double check on that. Let's put a pin in that, or a piece of yarn. Looks like I have an extra loop here, and I don't really know what happened, but I don't want to lose anything. So let's see if I can, goodness me, this is obnoxious. Okay, I put a piece of yarn through that, so now at least I know that that's caught. Okay, anyway, that is where I am at. I have quite a bit more, well, I have a few more sections to go on yoke decreasing, and then there is a large hood. So my goal for tonight is to try and finish all the yoke decreases. I know it's a lot. It's like 24 to 30 rows, and then I'll be starting on the hood, and if I can finish the yoke shaping tonight, then that will give me the next couple days to do the hood and hopefully bind off and leave it blocking. I tentatively promised that it would be due at the end of the month. This is a commission knit. But I got started a few days late because they were still making some decisions. So I probably have a few days leeway, and my hope is that if I finish it by Friday and block it over the weekend while I am gone, it will be dry when I come home and I can pack it up and send it out on Monday. So, and that would be finishing my October knit. So that is what's getting a lot of work this week. And like I said, if I don't finish it, I'm going to take it with me this weekend to finish it, because this weekend is a car trip, so I don't have to worry about luggage. But my hope is that I'm going to finish it in the next couple days, and I think I can knock it out. So that leaves me with Miles' mittens, Roxy's scarf, and that cowl, which I want to take in the car with me this weekend. I have another contract knit that I am working on, and then I have one for November that I need to start, and I have not swatched for Nanny Swaymo yet. So there will be lots of knitting. I'm not exactly sure what it will be. Next week I will bring some of, I'm doing a new kind of contract knitting, and I think I'm allowed to talk about it. So I will bring it next week so I can show you and tell you a little bit more about it, because I'm having a lot of fun at it. And it's something that's very different from anything else that I'm doing. And hopefully by then I will have finished some of the next pieces so I can bring them and I can show them to you. So I have lots on my knitting plate. Spinning is non-existent these days, which I'm sorry for, because I know a lot of you have expressed interest in my spinning, particularly when you told me what you wanted to see more of on the podcast. I would like to be spinning more, but I have taken on so much in terms of contract knitting. I think I'm going to have to be a little careful, kind of going into 2020, how I spread myself out. I have spread myself pretty thin this year, and part of it is just kind of in an attempt to supplement my income, which, I mean, I don't want to get too personal or discuss too much this year, but this is the first full year that I'm working from home, and I did take a pay cut to do that, so I have been sort of supplementing my income with a lot of the sample knitting, and I do really enjoy the sample knitting, and I am running out of space for knits for myself in the house. I have a whole bureau that is full of hand knits, plus several bins. And every year I kind of cull through them and try and donate to local shelters. So in a lot of ways, it's really good to do sample knitting. It supplements my income. It's fun, and it creates knits that leave the house. But I think next year I need to strive for a bit more balance on things that I want to do for myself, like spinning, and things that I want to knit for myself, and maybe some pattern design, as well as some sample knitting. I have committed to a few more things before the end of the year, so I suspect the next couple months I'm going to be working to try and finish some whips up and get a few more samples cranked out, but I am going to give some thought to it next year to see what I want to do. So, despite the fact that I have a lot that I can't show you, and I feel like I'm not moving through things very quickly, I have now taken up almost 30 minutes of your time, so I am going to let you go back to your crafting. I want to thank you for spending this time with me. A few bits of administration. Ryan, I am still waiting for you to contact me about your prize from the from my anniversary episode, which is pick a skein of yarn from my shop, and you'll get it in a project bag. Please contact me here. Well, I guess you probably can't contact me on YouTube, but you can email me at ldwcameron@gmail.com, or you can message me on Instagram, Ravelry, Twitter, pretty much anywhere you can find me, except I don't think YouTube you can do direct messages, and I certainly don't want you to leave your real name and address on there, but send me your real name and address and your pick of the skein in my shop. If I don't hear from you by next Monday when I record, I'm going to go ahead and draw someone else for the prize. So that will give you 2 full weeks to respond to me. So please get in touch with me. The second thing is November 1st, and I will start this thread today once I upload the video. November 1st starts the beginning of our gift craft along. I think I just call it the gift along. Basically, every year I host a craft along for the things that you're already crafting anyway. The only rule is that it can't be for you. It does not have to be a holiday gift. It just has to be something for someone else. Charity crafts count. If you're knitting a sweater for your child's next birthday, that's fine. Like I said, just not anything for you. It runs between November 1st and December 31st. I call it the gift along. It can include, I believe in including all the crafts. So it can be anything: knitting, spinning, weaving, crocheting, dyeing, sewing. Sell it to me. Okay? It cannot be more than 50%. I will allow whips, but it cannot be more than 50% done before November 1st. You really do need to do a portion of the crafting during the gift along period. And as I said, the only rule is it can't be for you. So any project that you complete during this time earns you an entry. We'd love to see you participate in the chatter thread. And there will be prizes. I have not decided what they will be yet, but there will be prizes. Probably some yarn, probably some hand spun, maybe a couple patterns. I will do a couple prizes because it is going to be a 2-month long along. And please come and join us. Lots of people join each year. If you're crafting for someone else anyway in the next 2 months, you can double, triple, quadruple dip with all the other craft alongs that you're doing. So just enter it in mine because you're already doing it and it's an extra chance to win a prize. I think that concludes the administrative portion. Now I'm going to send you on your way. Until I see you next time, happy knitting, happy spinning, happy sipping, whether it's tea or Diet Coke, and I'll see you next time. Bye.